There are millions of species in the Amazon, most of which have not yet been recognized and documented in scientific literature. The Amazon takes up 6% of our planet's land surface, but makes up over 50% in Earth's biodiversity. Scientists have even documented finding over 700 species of beetle on a single tree in the Amazon. Each species has different functions, each contributes to the rainforest in distinct and important ways. If just one of those species ceased to exist, it would lead to a butterfly effect with a wide range of consequences. For this reason, biodiversity is incredibly intertwined and is sometimes described as a house of cards. Along with the many animals, plants, and fungi, there's over 40 million people who don't just live in the Amazon, but depend upon it to support their way of life. Without it, they would not have the natural resources with which they could make clothing, medicines, houses, and food. It's no surprise that the Amazon is the biggest rainforest in the world. In fact, when you look at the total volume of all rainforests on Earth, the Amazon contributes to the majority of that total volume. Everyone's aware that plants take in carbon dioxide and release oxygen in a process called photosynthesis. So, in the place with the most plants in the world, it makes sense that the Amazon would take in and store massive amounts of carbon dioxide and release massive amounts of oxygen, which is why it's called the lungs of the planet. The Amazon needs our attention since this important habitat is under attack. On average, from 2001 to 2012, the Amazon lost over 5,000 square miles of rainforest per year. This is alarming. William Magnuson, a researcher specializing in biodiversity monitoring, warns that if the Amazon were to go away completely, so would 99% of the species that live there, because they are highly specialized and rely on the unique habitat. Many people are setting fire to the Amazon to clear it, which causes complete destruction, and the rainforest can't recover. Adriana Esquivel Melbert, an ecologist at the University of Birmingham, explains the significance of these fires, describing the rainforest as a closed canopy that shades and protects the trees. As more trees are taken down, the canopy opens, letting more hot sunlight in, and there isn't enough shade to protect the trees inside the canopy. This weakens the habitat until a tipping point is reached where the rainforest will become a desert and there will be nothing we can do to realistically reverse course. Sadly, we are way closer to that point than most people assume. Deforestation is when people convert rainforest land into land for something else. Small scale agriculture is a massive contributing factor to deforestation, as many grow or harvest commodities such as soy, palm oil, and sugarcane. The scale of deforestation in small scale agriculture depends on the value of certain goods in global markets and the economic conditions. The biggest cause of deforestation is the multi-billion-dollar industry of cattle ranching. It's obvious why many people are making a living this way, especially in countries with histories of economic instability. However, ranching has gotten out of hand, and many corporate buyers of beef and leather, including Walmart, are demanding change with potential loss of future business if the destruction of the Amazon continues. Since the early 2000s, Brazil has transitioned from exporting tropical agricultural products to exporting commodities such as soybeans, grains, and meats. Factors driving this change include new research that found ways for farmers to produce more foods and commodities on the same amount of land, and increased global demand for beef and animal feed. Brazil is capitalizing on this because of its favorable climate for harvesting crops, as they are able to harvest 2 to 3 crops a year on the same plot of land, compared to most competing nations that can only harvest one crop a year on a plot of land. Since Brazil became a top producer of corn and soybean, which are two key ingredients in cow feed, they have a competitive advantage in producing cattle. Brazil has increased beef production until it's solidified its position as the lead exporter. They shipped nearly $17 billion worth of beef in 2025 alone. which is why the previous president of Brazil tended to look the other way as people clear the Amazon for economic purposes. However, this decision is criticized by environmental scientists because the damage that is being done fast and, most importantly, can't be undone. Climate scientist Antonio Nobre warns that if we continue to make minimal progress in saving the Amazon, humans will no longer be able to survive on Earth. Nobre states that we should have done more yesterday, but it's now or never. What would happen if we failed and all rainforests ceased to exist? Firstly, droughts would become a much bigger problem since rainforests help regulate the water cycle. They recycle huge amounts of water into rivers, lakes, oceans, and release water vapor into the atmosphere in a process called transpiration. Rainforests also produce a quarter of the plants used to make modern medicines. Many medicines, including ones that treat leukemia and malaria, are from rainforest plants. So, if rainforests disappeared, it would take treatments for important diseases with it. Also, without rainforests absorbing the impact of violent winds from storms like hurricanes and typhoons, the number of people killed each year from tropical storms and the dollar amount of damages caused would skyrocket. NASA states that the majority of plants and animal species would go extinct in this worst case scenario. Also, losing the majority of plants would mean a lot more carbon dioxide would remain in the atmosphere, and since carbon dioxide radiates heat energy back to the surface, temperatures would increase significantly and climate change would accelerate. The Amazon alone absorbs a quarter of the total carbon dioxide absorbed by all land on Earth, which is why it can be described as the world's air conditioner. Many methods are being implemented to combat deforestation in the Amazon. As technology gets better, so do the tools we have to accurately measure, track, and map the Amazon, allowing people to see how the rainforest is changing. This monitoring allows root causes to be identified and action to be taken. The pitfall with this solution is that it helps people better know what is happening, but doesn't necessarily mean action is taken. That's why monitoring has to be paired with other solutions. Another method is empowering indigenous communities in the rainforest, expanding protected areas and giving them technology and practices to have a stronger voice in local politics have shown impressive results. From 2000 to 2012, rainforest areas outside these empowered communities experienced over 7 times the amount of deforestation compared to areas in these empowered communities. However, this is an indirect route that is hard to track the progress of, and there have been times when indigenous groups have were granted expanded land rights and turned around to sell the land. Legislation is another way to prevent deforestation. This has a massive impact as it provides laws and consequences for breaking them. The one big drawback is that passing legislation is a slow process that does not keep up with the quick rate of deforestation. The best solution is what we are seeing in Brazil by President Lula. Tougher enforcement has led to the recent sharp decline in deforestation of the Amazon. It would also be recommended to have a tax on cattle ranchers whose proceeds fund efforts to save the Amazon. When it comes to such a big issue, it's easy to feel small, but it's important to remember just how big an impact a single person can have. Greta Thunberg was just a kid who protested climate change outside the country's decision making body for 5 days straight. And that inspired tens of thousands to join her. Strong public policies and enforceable laws have proven to be effective, and we should advocate for more that protect the Amazon. Along with advocacy, a person can reduce their intake of meat exported from Brazil to avoid supporting cattle ranching by buying locally sourced beef or having fewer beef meals a week. Another way to help is by donating to organizations doing important work in the Amazon. There's many great organizations, but make sure they are legit by checking sites such as Great Nonprofits and Charity Watch. Deforestation is a massive problem that could lead to the loss of many species and permanent changes to the climate. But changes Brazil is making and younger generations being more environmentally conscious gives me hope that we can still avoid the worst case scenario. The clock is ticking and history is watching, but with modern technology, it's easier than ever to create a platform and express your views. So make your voices heard. Never underestimate the impact you can have on others and the impact they can have on even more people. The Amazon is here, and let's make it so it's here to stay. Before starting this documentary, I already knew a decent amount about deforestation in the Amazon, since I love the Amazon and know this issue is important. In making the documentary, I learned a lot about the backstory of how Brazilian cattle ranching became so out of hand. It was challenging to learn about the tipping point before I assumed that the Amazon is gone when it becomes completely deforested. But the tipping point shows that just enough deforestation has to occur before the Amazon can sustain itself and transitions to become a desert. I was surprised to learn about all the great things returning President Lula is doing to be tougher on environmental crimes in the Amazon and the incredible effects we're already seeing. Some stuff was shocking, some stuff was really sad, but overall, I have had more hope coming out of this than I expected because of Lula's recent actions and what we're seeing from younger generations.